Hi, I'm Shweta, a parent from the Kidari community and the Ikigai community, and I'm delighted to welcome Riddhi, Biren, Savla, an award-winning educationist and founder of the multi-award-winning Ikigai Global Prep School here in Mumbai. Riddhi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shweta, and thank you, Kidari, for having me on board this very, very exciting podcast that we're shooting.
So Riddhi, firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been 5 years since you founded Ikigai, and it's serendipity that you're now moving your first center to a much bigger space, even as you start your second one in Mulund. Tell us what inspired you to be an early childhood educator and, your vision for Ikigai.
Sure. So Shweta, interestingly, this was my first career choice. I actually wanted to be a nutritionist back then when I was in college. But I didn't score well in my grade 12, and bio wasn't an option that was given to me in my, your BSc years. So by chance, they put me into child psychology, and maybe 6 months into studying about children, I realized like maybe this is what I paid for, because I suddenly started enjoying that way. So this was a chance encounter, but I'm grateful that this is what I was picked for, because I absolutely love my day at school every single day. And coming to your second question about, what was it, sorry?
Your vision for Ikigai.
The vision for Ikigai actually very hard to kind of put it into one sentence, but just trying to break away from what education has been for the last 30, 40, 50 years. I think when we look around Shweta, everything's changed around us. The cars we drive, the phones we use, the houses that we live in, even the foods that we order at restaurants. But what unfortunately hasn't changed is how we are teaching our children at school. So what the content can remain the same. We still have to teach them math and numbers, shapes and colors. But it's about how we teach that I think now is due to get evolved. That's what we're trying to do with Ikigai.
Amazing. So tell us more about Ikigai itself, the curriculum. Specifically, was there a gap that you were trying to address or something specific that you wanted Ikigai to stand for?
So Shweta, the idea was very simple. It was about equipping children with skill sets versus knowledge. Because if you look at the world out there, knowledge is now available at our fingertips, right? Every question can be answered through Google. Why are we still feeding our children knowledge? It is skill sets that they need to build, because 20 years from now, when our children graduate out of universities, we don't even know what professions are going to exist. So how can we today prepare them for 20 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, for things we don't know, we can't predict, right? But skill sets is something that's proven to be consistent. No matter what your passion you grow up to be in, you're still going to need confidence, communication, creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. I call these the 5 C's of the 21st century. And I think across careers and across professions, these skill sets will remain consistent. That's what Ikigai is trying to give, apart from the regular, like I said, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3, the colors, shapes, numbers.
Coming from banking, I have seen innovation in banking products, fintech. What does innovation in early learning look like?
One of the ideas that I was really inspired by while we were designing the space was to break away from the concept that preschool should be bright colored, right? So those red, yellow, blue walls with cartoons painted all over them. Nobody realized that they were actually distracting the children from focused learning, right? Because there was so much overstimulation visually with these children, and then all the parents or teachers would be complaining about children having too much energy, not wanting to sit in one place, or not be engaged in an activity for more than 2 or 3 minutes. So we tried to go back and reinvent the Biren and look at whether we should tone down how our infrastructure looks. Because as part of Reggio Emilia, which is an Italian approach to early childhood, they say that your environment is the third teacher. So if your classrooms look a certain way, the children will or maybe subconsciously want to sit down, calm down and focus. I call this like the miniature office for children, right? Because this is where they do their work, which is play. Play is the child's work. So that is the innovation that we got in, where if you look at Ikigai, our walls are white or they're very subdued pastel shades of blues, greens and pinks.
Wow.
Which is very, very calming for a child.
So your vision for Ikigai is wonderful, right? It's so inspiring. But after all, it's your teachers who need to ensure that they deliver that intent to every single child, every single day. So what are your top 3 best practices to, have the team lift that vision that you have defined, or those values that you define?
Yes, Shweta, I love the question, by the way, because teacher training is very, very close to my heart. So there's a couple of things that we do at Ikigai. One is that when we're recruiting our teachers, we make sure to check that they're here because they want to be here and not because this is a quick 4 or 5 hour job away from home. So all our teachers are very, very passionate, and they are early childhood educators because they choose to be those. They absolutely love spending time with children. They will pick spending time with a child versus being with an adult any day. Number 2 is a lot of cross sharing. So every day after the kids eat, between 1 and 1:45, our team of teachers sits together and discusses what happened in class that day. We talk about our achievements and our success stories, but we'll also talk about what's not working, what our struggle points are, so that someone else will probably share what they did in their classrooms and how that worked out, right? So a lot of cross-sharing of techniques, strategies, ideas. And thirdly, we love social media. So we're all the time referring to what's happening in Australia, what's happening in Finland, what's Singapore doing, also what tier 2, tier 3 cities or villages and barbaries in India are doing, and how can we kind of take inspiration from the world and from India as a community and bring that back to our schools. So continuous teacher professional development, whether you talk about workshops or whether you talk about research online.
Yeah, that seems to be working really well.
You see it, yes.
Yeah. I'm sure viewers of this episode will be not just from Mumbai, but parents, in other cities, towns around the world. So, what could be, like a top of mind checklist, for parents when they're evaluating preschools for their kids?
I would definitely put distance to the school as one of the top criteria. Don't look out for a school that's a 40-minute drive one way for your child, because you don't want to exhaust them with all the travel and the traffic and the chaos. Secondly, I would say look at how good their teachers are. Do they have the qualification? Because in India, there is no mandate for a preschool teacher to be qualified, but we recommend that they do have an early childhood degree. So the qualification, teacher experience, how long they've been at that school in terms of sustainability. And maybe thirdly, the vision with which the founder is, promoting or proposing the school to be. Lastly, how well are they preparing the children to get into high schools also, because that transition is a very important one, which I think preschools must own own responsibility to help the kids get ready to make that move.
Yeah, I think it just touched a chord, right? I think talking about high schools, I think that whole experience can be so stressful for a parent in terms of choosing, or rather, choosing schools to, apply for, because again, getting through is so tough, right? So, how do you suggest, parents go about preparing themselves and their kids? And do you think interview training is like too far, or what it means?
So personally, Shweta, I'm not someone who is a big fan of interview training classes, because like I said in my previous answer also, is that it's the preschool's job. Preschool means preparatory school. It's our job to take it upon ourselves to prepare these children to be able to crack these interviews or observations or whatever they're called, and unfortunately they exist now in most parts of Bombay.
Yes.
So I think it's our responsibility, and if we as founders or as curriculum designers are mindful enough to embed these trainings within our curriculum, then it becomes easy for all parties involved, right? It's great for the teachers, it's very easy for the parents then, because you don't have to look out for an outside source, and it's easy for the kids because while they're playing, they're still developing skill sets that they're bringing to practice it. So I would say a big no to any parent who's watching this. Please don't enroll your kids in after school interview training classes. They put a lot of pressure on the kids. Imagine it's 1 year of pressure training, and on the day of the interview you won't even know if your child is having a brain or not. They're talking to the stranger. What if they're having a bad day and they won't answer? Then 1 year of effort just goes down the drain. So I don't think it's good.
So early childhood degree is not mandatory. It's only recommended. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
80% schools in the country have teachers who have no qualification. They're just there. They're trying to change to now.
So, very interesting that you mentioned, right? Preschools as preparatory schools. And I think, as a parent, I feel a preschool has such an important place in the child's life. And that's where that whole lifelong journey of learning starts. It's a critical foundation that is being built. So, tell us more about it, right? What do you think what's the role that a preschool plays in setting the foundation right?
I think the word that comes to my mind is love for learning, right? So if you are able to develop a sense in the children where they want to wake up every morning and come to school.
Yeah.
We get video calls every weekend or during our Diwali and Xmas days to say, Miss Riddhi, why is school shut today? Didn't we come to school? I think then you've done everything you had to as a priest. Right? So you have to make the process of learning an enjoyable one. One of the reasons that I also chose to be a teacher is because when I went to school, I really didn't enjoy the process. I had no teacher tell me, Riddhi, you're good at this. I always grew up believing I'm not good enough. And I want to change that around. So today, when I interact with a child, we're going to make sure that every child is recognized for something that they do well. And not only being told, oh, you can't do this, or you don't know this, or you're too slow at this. Right? Identifying and celebrating successes and talents and achievements over all the time pinpointing what they're lacking.
Yeah.
And then I think, like I said, we've hit the right notes, and then you've developed that love for lifelong learning. Like they always want to go to school then.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? I mean, I've seen kids cry like to go to school, and like I've seen kids, I mean my own kid, right? So excited to come to school every single day. So yeah.
So that's the effort and the vision with which we designed our curriculum and our experiences, is to develop that love for lifelong learning.
Yeah. That's really amazing. So speaking about lifelong learning, right? There are all these after-school classes, and there's so much variety to choose from as a parent. And of course, Ikigai specializes in making that happen.
Yes.
What do you think are the domains that parents should prioritize, or how should they go about choosing?
I would say then go for co-curricular experiences in the early years especially. So 0 to 6, give them as much exposure to music, art, dance, physical, cross-motor, fine-motor, sensory experiences over classes that are not academic in nature. So mental math, phonics, all of those are great, but those can be pushed to maybe a little later age and stage, because anyway schools will happen and reading and writing will happen.
Yes.
But I think to develop that talent or that innate ability that children are born with, they're naturally inclined to music, they're naturally inclined to art. So giving them more and more of those experiences as after school workshops or activity classes will be great, because then you're not just developing that particular ability, but you're also giving them a lot of social skill building opportunity, right? Making friends, hanging around with people your age, learning to share, wait for your turn. A lot of these byproducts happen through these workshops. And
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think let's talk a little bit about the whole business side of running a school, right? I mean, after all, I'm very curious to know, how did you arm yourself with the economic and operational knowledge of running a school?
So before I started Ikigai, I was working for a lot of people, right? So I worked with preschools, I worked with high schools, I worked with daycare centers. My last job was with a teacher training institute. That was also a consultancy. So we had people who wanted to start their schools, we used to help them set up their schools. So that gave me enough annual and experience, about 12 to 13 years doing this, before finally taking the choice to be an entrepreneur. Economically, I think I was blessed to come from a family that was backing me very strongly when I needed it. Because we launched in the middle of COVID. So there was a lot of money that I had to pay for everything that I did in the 12 years of being around, but also had to buy those guest sound, family help. And that's what it was pretty much. Now we're sailing through, we're pretty much autopilot, and that's why Ikigai Nunun is happening, and so is the new Ikigai Machiga.
Lovely. So the whole commercial viability aspect, I mean, did that daunt you? I mean, dipping your savings and all of that?
It is very scary. I was just mentioning to someone today about how you will have sleepless nights, you're worried about whether you hit your numbers, is your gate really strong, or do you need to rethink? How do you price yourself, because it has to be the sweet spot. It can't be too high, can't be too low for everything that you're giving. So it's a little bit of a calculation, but also a lot of intuition that I used to depend on, a lot of feedback that are generated with my networking, with my relationships with parents, with educators. So yes, it is daunting, Shweta, but I also look at it as a thrill ride, because it's a journey that's evolving every moment, and it's also helping you learn and grow through it. So there's been a lot of personal development, a lot of things that I've learned also through my professional job, which I love. Absolutely, I wouldn't trade that for anything as a door.
Amazing. What have been some of your biggest challenges and how did you deal with it?
One of my biggest ones was finding the right space, in terms of the approach. Is there enough parking? Is there an outdoor area? So finding the right place for a free school, because there's so many criteria that you have to look at, is one of my biggest challenges, which finally we ticked off. Then finding, recruiting, the right kind of teachers on board, very, very passionate people, to find them and then to keep that, to retain that is a big one.
Yeah.
And another challenge would be probably to push ourselves beyond what we originally thought we could do. Because every day is a discovery. So when we actually started off Ikigai, I didn't really think we would be where we are today. But now that we are here, it's a challenge, right? That now we want to push ourselves beyond and see what else can we do? How else can we make a difference to more and more people out there?
Lovely, lovely. So, what does a good day at work look like for you?
Oh, a best day at work would be to come to school and out of the 5 hours that I'm here, maybe spend 3.5 to 4 hours with the children in the classroom. So while I have a very beautiful, cozy office, I usually don't like to be inside it because I'm in the classroom, hanging around with the children, talking to them. Very casual, okay? There's no curriculum that I will go with. And then maybe ending the day with teachers, taking feedback, sharing feedback, watching them in action and telling them how I would have done it if there was a different way I would have done it.
Yeah.
And then maybe in the evening, ending it with a few admission inquiries, maybe a few parent counseling calls, guiding parents towards what high schools best suit their little ones. That's my best day at work.
Yeah. And I think you teach music yourself, don't you?
Once a week I will bring my instruments and walk into the classrooms, though I haven't been able to do too much of it recently because of the new spaces that we're building. But I hope to resume from June on.
Yeah, of course. Lovely. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
It would be the ability to time travel, go into the future and look at what it's going to be like so I can prepare my babies for it.
Outstanding. If not early years learning, who would you be?
I'd probably be a content creator, or maybe a dancer, or maybe a singer. Someone who performs, who's out there turn the camera out on the stage.
Yeah. I'm sure you would rock that as well. Who's your role model in education?
Fatima Agarkar.
Can you tell us a little more about?
Sure. So she was someone who picked me up when I was new in this field, and JDC, she was part of the trustees at JDC, and I worked with her for 6 years. Then she started a teacher training company. I worked with her again for 5 years, and that's where I've learned a lot of what I'm doing today. So that's
Lovely. What's your go-to way to relax after a long day at work?
I play squash and I swim. So basically, a sport is my therapy. Or maybe sometimes, just going to the beach, watching the sunset, or walking on the sand. It's very, very therapeutic as well.
Amazing. Top tip for a new teacher?
Never stop learning and never say I arrived, because I don't think after 15, 20, 30 years of BK also you'll never arrive, because the world is changing and we need to keep going.
Yes, and you're always a work in progress. Absolutely. The most challenging part of your job?
Managing the parents.
Yeah, I kind of get that, I need to be being an Ikigai parent myself, but yes.
Oh, the easy one.
If you could swap your life with any one famous person in the world for a day, who would it be?
Oh my god, I haven't thought of this. Maybe Anushka Sharma, because I'm a big Virat Kohli fan.
Amazing. Favorite dish in the world?
Has to be pani puri. Love it. My Sunday guilty pleasure.
So with that, I think we are, towards the end of the podcast, but there are, I think, a couple of closing remarks that we'd like you to make. So just as students are teachers, grown-ups are mentors, right? You did speak about your role model earlier, but who would be your mentors and something those?
So there's a couple of them. My dad being one of them. He is no more, but he was someone I would go to for the smallest of hitches that I would case at work or otherwise, and he would have the simplest answer, to very, very complicated questions as well. Then we've got Vijay Shah, who's part of our advisory panel, and he's not from education, he's from finance, but he gives us, all the projection shades when I'm stuck on their board, what futuring looks like. A lot of it would come from Riddhi Mohan, the singer. She looks at our music and movement curriculum. It keeps giving us inputs on how we can embed a lot of Indian fusion music into what our children are learning at school. So we go a little beyond the wheels of the bus and the ABC Twinkle People, right? So giving them a little bit of cultural connection. So that's another person that I keep in touch with, that learn a lot from.
Amazing, amazing. But so far, which have been some of your most rewarding moments?
So the awards and the recognition have never really given me the kind of high that I get when there is a student that I taught maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, or when I started out my career, and when they will stop me in the middle of the road or in the mall, or if they don't remember me, their parents will, and they'll say, Riddhi, right from JBC, and right, my child is now 20 and you were like Kirevani teacher, and I'll be like, wow, right? So I think that happiness, nothing can ever give you. I think no monetary compensation, no house full seats, none of that. And the other one is my every morning at Ikigai when the babies come in and they give me that hug.
Yeah.
And they want nothing in return, right? And I will forget about every worry in the world. So just that hug, that unconditional love that I receive is the most rewarding part of being a teacher.
Awesome. On that note, I think we're at the end of this episode, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. And thank you so much, Riddhi. This was
Shweta.
really wonderful.
Thank you, and I think it was a pleasure because you're an Ikigai mom, and doing this with you was, I think, a joyride. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Kidayaris and you, Sonia, for doing this because this is super exciting on our 5th birthday.
Awesome. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Shweta.